Meanwhile, Iran's defense minister is in China today. Beijing engaging in what the Wall Street Journal calls cautious diplomacy with Iran. Russia's defense minister will also be at that meeting. Oil reacting after President Trump posted this to Truth Social. China can now continue to purchase oil from Iran. Hopefully, they'll be purchasing plenty from the U.S. also. It was my great honor to make this happen. The president further explaining at the NATO summit yesterday. Watch.
You said China can now continue to purchase oil from Iran.
Yeah.
Are you giving up on your maximum pressure campaign? Because there are sanctions right now.
With who?
On Iran.
They just had a war. The war was fought. They fought it bravely. I'm not giving up. They're in the oil business. I mean, I could stop it if I wanted. I could sell China the oil myself. I don't want to do that. They're going to need money to put that country back into shape. No, China is going to want to buy oil. They can buy it from us. They can buy it from other people. But you're going to have to put that country back into shape. It desperately needs money.
Interesting development here. I mean, China buys roughly 90% of Iranian oil, which has limited buyers due to the U.S. sanctions. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, what's your reaction to this? The president allowing China to continue buying that oil?
Well, President Trump continues to give olive branches to the Chinese, but for internal reasons, Chinese leaders either cannot or will not reciprocate. Maria, we got to remember that at this moment, China is continuing to violate its trade obligations to us, including its May 12th obligation to sell rare earth. It's continuing to steal our U.S. intellectual property. It is sending in fungus and other biological agents to blight our crops and harm our livestock. It's selling fentanyl to kill Americans. You know, the Chinese are saying, look, I'm going to continue to violate my obligations to you, United States. What are you going to do about it? Well, now it's time for President Trump to do something about it. It's time for President Trump to impose costs on the Chinese, severe costs.
You know, I mean, the president has so many levers to pull with regard to China. And you wonder why he's holding off on pulling those levers right now, Gordon. Look, you can't, I don't think you can decouple from China overnight. We're so reliant on the Chinese supply chain. So could it be that President Trump is waiting and watching and holding all the cards by allowing the oil to still flow?
Well, I guess so. That's my only explanation for it. But at some point, you know, we got to realize that the Chinese political system is in turmoil. You were the first American media personality to talk about Xi Jinping's troubles. And now there are all sorts of rumors about his downfall. We don't know if those rumors are true or not, but we do know that the Chinese political system now cannot reciprocate to President Trump. So we need to start defending our own society, regardless of what's going on in Beijing. We need to protect Americans.
Yeah, and what you're referring to is what I reported many, many months ago, that Xi Jinping is a lot weaker than anyone knew, that when he had that mini stroke a couple of years ago, they actually took away the military oversight and gave it to his quote-unquote brother. We don't know if that's true. We won't know. But it certainly is interesting to see big companies and the people of China talking about that, which are among my sources. Now, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that Beijing is cracking down on moving its rare earth exports. Writing, and we reported this because the Financial Times first reported a similar story, that China is cataloging experts to prevent them from sharing trade secrets with foreign entities. Some Chinese experts have been asked to turn in their passports to prevent unauthorized trips abroad, Gordon. So here you have President Trump trying to get China to release those rare earth minerals, and China doing everything that it can to make it harder and harder for American entities to get their hands on those rare earth metals. It's another issue here.
Well, it certainly is, because what China is doing with its rare earth experts and specialists does smell like a trade violation, especially the May 12th obligations to sell us rare earths. You know, this shows us, as you point out, that we're reliant on China. And that means we need to eliminate those vulnerabilities to a hostile state. So right now, it's not only rare earths, it's pharmaceuticals and a few other items. We need to make sure that the United States can make those on our own soil, because we can't rely on others, including our friends, to help us at times of need. So
Right.
clearly, we must do something.
And that's why I think that President Trump is allowing the oil to flow, China to continue buying oil from Iran, keeping them at bay so that he gets what he wants. And it also underlines how important those rare earth minerals are. I mean, obviously, they're not just for technology in the U.S., but it's used for the military. So this is a conundrum. China's premier is meanwhile projecting confidence at the World Economic Forum, saying that China can turn into, quote, a mega-sized consumer powerhouse, while portraying Beijing as a stabilizing force in the shifting trade landscape. However, President Trump's tariffs were not even mentioned, despite Beijing seeing weak consumer sentiment and deflationary pressures. I mean, Gordon, look, we all know the strength of China. It is the producer of products to the world. And, you know, it's really the production side of the equation, not the consumer side of the equation. They need the American consumer. But they're now trying to project that they can eventually be that consumer. Your thoughts?
Well, they can't do it because the fundamental structure of the Chinese economy and the Chinese political system are to inhibit consumption. The fundamental structure of the Chinese political system is to help state banks and state enterprises, and they do that in all sorts of ways of keeping money out of the hands of the Chinese consumer. You know, China in the last 2 or 3 weeks has bragged about increases in retail spending, but that's only because the Chinese central government has given subsidies and handouts to Chinese consumers. Once those handouts go away, the retail spending drops. And we are seeing a very weak consumer price index, down for 4 straight months in May. That signals deflation. Deflation, of course, is an economy killer. And by the way, all of those statements were made by Premier Li Qiang. They should have been made by Xi Jinping. That suggests Xi Jinping is in trouble, especially because Li Qiang is going to go to the BRICS summit. This is the first time that Xi Jinping is skipping a BRICS summit. And that corroborates your reporting of his downfall.
That is a great point, Gordon. That's absolutely right. Yeah, I mentioned that BRICS summit. Very interesting that it's not Xi Jinping attending the summit. Gordon, always great to catch up. Thanks so much. We'll be watching all of that.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Gordon Chang joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.